would like to invite Shaimaa to talk now. So Shaimaa Lazem is an associate research professor at the City for Scientific Research and Technological Application, Alexandria, Egypt. She earned her PhD in the human-computer interaction in 2012 from Virginia Tech, USA. She is going to talk today about pitching human-centered technology to AI startups in Africa, the big questions. Over to you, Shaimaa.
Hello, Ranjal. Thanks for the introduction. It's really nice to be here, and I think it's in the inaugural event for the HCI South Asia community. Really, thanks for the kind invitation. So I would like to talk to you a little bit today about how we think, myself and a couple of colleagues, about pitching human-centered technology to AI startups in Africa, and what are the big questions that we really consider. So this is a view of my workplace. It's shaped around pyramids, but these are not the great pyramids. So I have like one real pyramid behind me in the background. And just in case, so if you have any stereotypes about pyramids and camels in Egypt, I would like to emphasize that Egypt has also camels, if you see the picture to the right. So this camel is standing in front of the entrance gate of my science park, where I work, because it's located near a rural area in, in Northwest Egypt. And I did a work with the community around my science park, and doing different kind of technology development, education, cultural heritage documentation, health, and recently moved, as many of the researchers in Egypt, with AI hype, to AI and doing Arabic sentiment analysis. But one main thing that was really focused for me since I finished my PhD and returned to Egypt, that was HCI Education. And I had really was interested in introducing it to computer science students, especially those who are really are technically oriented and think of the technology as a solution to everything. So I had in mind is like how to pitch HCI to them. So by the virtue of that, the fact that Egypt is located in two different interesting regions, as an Arab country and also African country, I got involved in two HCI communities, the ArabHCI and the AfriCI, and both are regional communities that aim to promote HCI education and research in their respective regions. So I'm assuming is like I'm also carrying greetings from ArabHCI and Africa to the HCI for South Asia. So to talk a little bit about the motive or the behind the scene for these communities, there was an interesting paper in the ACM CHI flagship conference, the upcoming one in May, that really has a really interesting statistics that 73% of the CHI study findings are based on Western participants located in countries that have less than 12% of the world population, meaning that most of the HCI knowledge that we use and teach and try to use and pitch with design technology are really not based on participants from the region that we work on. But way before these statistics come, the ArabHCI and Africa communities, and several years ago, we felt that disconnect or that gap between how us as African and Arab researchers think of ourselves and our context, and how we are represented in the global HCI discourse. That was, we had like a sense of misrepresentation, and that the subjects or the communities that we come from are somehow sometimes subject to certain stereotypes. For instance, at some point, all the Arabs were represented in the global HCI discourse, were kind of talking about the Arab refugees, despite the fact that many actually of the Arab users are on social media and in the internet, but as users. So we were targeted somehow as an objects of research rather than being a typical user, so to speak. So what these communities created, what we call alternatives, or places that we could generate the local language that is missing in the global HCI discourse. So local intellectual spaces, those are workshops, conferences, where really local language and the nuances of our cultures are welcomed, and where local researchers, HCI researchers, don't have to represent themselves or evidence themselves, their credibility through Western eyes. So that was really important step to build a good capacity of HCI and to discuss the issues that really matters without the need to argue if these issues are of importance in the global community or not. And quite often, it's like these meetings or workshops and conferences have local and Western researchers as well. There's nothing wrong about that, but having the local is dominating, created a different kind of atmosphere that is more welcoming for local researchers to voice their concern and to talk about their agendas, whether or not it's appreciated in the global community. So one good thing came out of these local spaces is like the project I'm talking about today, which is HCI Education in Africa, and the attempt to create our HCI education narrative in Africa. So this is the project that came out of the 2020 Google Award of Inclusion Research, and the kind of official name of it is Human-Centered Technology Design for Social Justice in Africa. And I often get a question about having social justice and that project being funded by Google AI. And so my answer to that is like, when we applied for that fund, really that all that controversy around the Google Ethical AI group wasn't there. And the second thing, which is really came a nice surprise to us, is like when Google funded the project, they really did not interfere in the research agenda. The project come as an unrestricted gift to the university, and we're free to do whatever we wanted. So that was a really good thing. So I'm having this project. I'm the co-PI of the project. The main principal investigator is Anicia Peters, who is a Pro-Vice Chancellor for Innovation, Research and Development in the University of Namibia. And also we have Hafini Mathoko as a postdoctoral who just joined the project. So the motive behind the project, so what really motivated us to write the proposal was that AI hype that we've seen in the past couple of years in all the African countries. Interest in AI technology, increased interest in educating students about AI, machine learning, deep learning, I wouldn't say push, but incentivizing more researchers to deviate their research to AI areas, to the extent that you could find in the literature articles with the title "The AI Invasion Coming to Africa," and it's a good thing. So just saying that there is no kind of invasion is a good thing. So this is not the first time that we have a technology hype. So in the past, we've heard that bringing computers and mobiles could help educate all the poor children across the continent. And we'll hear other stories about how drones would help mitigate all the African problems and whatever kind of emerging technology. It's right now just it's AI is a focus. So what's wrong with these narratives is basically they are technocentric narrative, and they are also emphasized on the deficit narrative. So it seems that as if the people on the continent had some sort of problems, like major problems like poverty, education, health, and just by bringing some sort of technology, whether it's AI or whatever comes in the future, we'll be able to solve and mitigate for these problems. So, but the question is, so how that look really in the African context? So, so this is a figure from, I really liked, coming from a paper recently published in the ACM Conference on Fairness, Accountability, and Transparency. and really try to map the stakeholders, different stakeholders for data sharing in Africa. And by data sharing, really what they mean is like providing data. And we know that data is the main thing that you need to build a good an AI model, and the model is good as the data that you use to train it. So, so the stakeholders are mapped on the shape of an iceberg. So at the top of the iceberg, you'll find the government body, NGOs who usually provide fund, sometimes big tech companies, global North researchers who are eager to help the people of the continent, providing the recent advances and the recent AI resources to help solve many problems in the continent using AI and recent technologies. At the bottom, unfortunately, at the bottom of that iceberg, there are global South researchers, the people who label the data, the people who collect the data, and the very, very bottom are the data subjects or the individuals or communities who provide the data. And the main difference between what's on the top of the iceberg and then what's on the bottom of the iceberg is the power imbalance. There is a huge power imbalance between those who control the data narratives, and hence the AI narratives are on the top of the iceberg, and those are at the bottom really have less power and say in what the AI will do for them. And here I wanted to say that I'm really not against. I think there are plenty of good things that you could do with AI, but unless that power imbalance is fully explored, it will be difficult for the continent to reap the benefit of using AI technology. I'm just giving a couple of examples, but you could find more in the paper and others on the media as well. So for instance, if you are a community that providing data about how rich your soil is, or maybe genomic data about livestock or what different kind of data, while this data could be for the global good, and people think of it as to provide you with models to improve how you plant your crops or raise your animals or whatsoever. At the same time, by not overlooking the power imbalances, the same data could be could make you subject to people who wanted to claim your land just because of the same reason that you have good resources on this land. And this happened in the past of the African continent. So this is something that cannot be ignored. Other examples is like you could provide your data to help in a health program for diagnostics whatsoever, and of the purpose that it is non-for-profit, but because there is no clarity on how the data will be shared or what will happen after the duration of the project, you could be surprised that the data is used later on for profit, and you're kind of out of that loop, even though you're a part of that data or you provided the data as a community. So really mapping all these stakeholders and understanding the power imbalances among them is crucial to benefit from AI. And HCI could help, as an interdisciplinary field usually draws from social sciences and have a really interesting toolbox of methods and critical sciences, and draws from social and critical sciences, an interesting box of methods. You have the ability to use the HCI knowledge, and some of them is already there, to engage with different stakeholders, to engage with the communities, to engage with the users in different ways, and to bring the service issues at the intersection of social justice, technology, and data management, and not just the issues related to the interface and technology. So that was really what we had in mind before embarking on this project. I'm just giving more examples on the things that we could find in your toolbox. More recently, things about decolonizing design, and decolonial computing is at a critical stand that explicitly allows you to explore the power imbalances. So you ask, whose research agenda? If you have like researchers coming from the north or an NGO interested in that project, so you question who has the power, and whose research agenda, and how the knowledge is generated, and what will happen to the data after it's collected, and what benefit will come to the community. So by understanding what we call the body politics and the geopolitics, we'll be able to ask the right questions during design. So the problem is, so HCI could really help. The problem is, like in the past, I think maybe 10 years, HCI, teaching HCI to students have been a bit of a challenge. Even though there is an interest that is growing in teaching HCI, but nonetheless, the popular forms of HCI in the institutions and among the computer science students are the parts that's related to engineering and ironically AI, things like brain-computer interfaces. And less popular are the kind of HCI that's really rely or draws from other disciplines and collaborative methods. On a different island, the practitioner island, this is because there aren't many HCI academic programs, there is an interest in UI and UX for the mere design of good user and usable interface. And those are mostly using Western guidelines for design. So the big question that we have as we design our curriculum, so that the main outcome or the deliverable of that project will be an HCI course that we think of it and will deliver to different stakeholders. So the main thing that, main questions that we have in mind. So first of all, the path to impact, how we design that course so that we maximize the kind of impact that we'll get out of it. So the kind of traditional path to HCI teaching, we start by teaching students about usability, user interface guidelines, things that's close to more software engineering. And of course, that might differ from country to country, continent to continent, but this is the kind of thing that we're familiar or have seen repeatedly here in Africa. And then if they are advanced a little bit, we talk to them about qualitative methods, which they may or may not like. And then if they keep studying HCI and keep engaged with us in that study, we might end up telling them about really the interesting parts is how to work with the communities, things like tools like participatory design and co-design and critical methods and critical design methods in HCI. So this is a very long path. It's also slow and it's also uncertain path because at the end of the day, hopefully some of these will reach the end and possibly many of them will be only few academics. If they are engaged in AI project, they will be able to kind of share the knowledge with the other stakeholders. Otherwise, most of the HCI will be in AI projects, those who will study the UI and UX and just focus on the interface. So this is a kind of question. So our first thing is like how to flip that thing. And when we teach HCI, really talk about the things that matter in the context on the continent. And that has an implication on two things, like to whom we teach and also the name that we use to teach. So to whom we teach, often we think of our audience as the students and possibly HCI academics, but really we think if we want to have impact in the issue like the AI, we would like to talk to different people as well who have more power when it comes to developing AI products, such as the entrepreneurs, business owners, policy owners. We would like also to engage with the communities, and we would like also to engage with the practitioner community who don't have maybe who wouldn't find an HCI program to join and self-learn. So we really think that we need to target different stakeholders so that course design will have like modules that could be taught to different stakeholders and engage them with the things that we think important to know when it comes to designing AI technologies. So how we do this? So participation across Africa is one important thing to us because we realize also the African context is not just one context, it's also context with a plural S. Different countries has different norms, different communities, different restrictions. So even though we're going to start in the University of Namibia in Namibia, but we'll have open discussions across Africa about the structure of the course, the kind of material, and we will invite different academics to engage and try different modules in their own context. So the main thing that we will do, or the chunk of work, will be like the academic knowledge translation from the knowledge that we know it's HCI. So there is a context translation to a different context, but also translation to a different audience. Like I said, it's not just HCI students or CS students. We would like to translate to different stakeholders as well. And mainly adding the African context, whether we go to the communities like we myself and Anicia has done in the past in our HCI courses, or bring them to the classroom to token and engage with what we say. Being participants in this conversation is crucial for them, because at the end of the day, these technologies are meant to serve these communities, so to speak. By being the classical thing, we try to be critical and reflective, open in our resources, and put these resources in open source for any educator who would like to take, appropriate, comment, etc. So last, but maybe not least, and maybe this is a fun exercise that you could do, as we think about the branding our course, we discovered that the term HCI hasn't served us well since we tried to pitch it to computer science students and later to startups. So that term was rather confusing. So we're thinking, is like, what could be possibly alternative names that we could use for our course? And here I'm really specifically talking about the name. There is no question the body of knowledge is just precious. But things, for instance, we're thinking of that emphasis on between human and computer and human really puts an emphasis on the interaction rather than the context. And maybe you would like to put the context or add the context more in the name. Also, it's not just one human. It's, in our case, will be humans. It's not just the human who will use the AI technology, but also could be starting from the human who provided the data and the other human who labeled the data and collected the data, etc. So if we just also some of the questions that we have, and really this could be a nice exercise, and we plan to do that with the startups that we would work with. If we talk about data and something, we will miss the human, but we talk about design and something, we target designers only, and we think we're not, we shouldn't be targeting designer only. We need also to bring like communities and societies. So that would be an open question among the others that we have about teaching HCI. Well, that was the end of my presentation. Thank you very much, and happy to take questions.
Thank you, Shaimaa. It was lovely listening to you, and we would love to get support from you in building South Asia, HCI for South Asia initiative. We would love that. We invite you to our CAI workshop, to our other discussion where you could share all this knowledge. We would love to understand how we should move forward in the Indian subcontinent with your support, and would love to always get merged with the ArabHCI, ArabHCI initiative, what they're going to. And the whole intention of also starting HCI for South Asia is also to bring the Indian subcontinent researchers and practitioners together, not to make another group, but become more contextualized in HCI. So would love to get more insight from you in the coming days. As of right now, we do not have any questions from our audience. If anyone wants to ask any question, they could put it on a Q&A box.
I have a question in the meantime. Can you, so this work that you are trying to develop a course, it is like really, really great. And I have been also feeling that we may be needing something similar for the Indian context as well. Like we have guaranteed courses in math and engineering and other areas, but maybe a course on HCI would also be very helpful. So can you share a little bit about how you were planning to implement, like you talked about it in your slides as well, like should all the African countries have it, or maybe some specific ones? Like what is the current stage right now?
Okay, so the current state is that we were going to pilot the course in a technology hub in Namibia with the startups interested in doing or developing AI products. So we will work closely on them on these projects. At the same time, we will have meetings across Africa, hopefully with the help of from HCI, to discuss with the educators the kind of concerns that we have and the kind of new design and or a kind of different perspective that we have about teaching HCI in that course. And by sharing knowledge and participating and thinking together, will be like, we will open the door to other educators who would like to like jump on the initiative and try to teach HCI on their own, on their universities, and or even in short courses, piloting the joint thoughts and participatory thinking results in their own context. That will be how we think of it right now. And judging from previous experiences, we think this is a very viable. At some point when I started teaching HCI in Egypt, I started doing schools, like in this, organizing short courses over 2 weeks in my summer school. So it doesn't have to be an academic course really to teach students and deliver the message, so to speak.
Thank you. We have another question. Great talk. We have the numbers, but not yet a voice. And like you mentioned, education is definitely the way to go. This takes time. What can be something we can do right away, as some of us already involved in the HCI committee? Any suggestions to how to be heard now?
Okay, so education takes time. Okay. So we have to work on fixing on the long term, to be honest. I mean, any quick fixes will not help at the moment, because like I said, if we think of what we do as a mitigation to whatever happens in AI, we'll find another emerging technology with another hype, and we'll be not able to face it. So a change in culture means that we need to focus on education. So immediately in your own context, there are things, simple things, that if you would like to bring awareness of the different aspects of AI designs, so things like the bias in AI, the bias in the data set. So you could have like seminars and little talks, or even record the video, some of the interesting resources. So let's not forget that many of the published papers could be behind paywalls for African researchers, and maybe others in Indian universities who don't have access to that. So a nice thing is if you could record the call, record the video, tell the people about how AI could go wrong, or a case study when AI could have gone wrong, but you managed to fix that. So building the resources and the local knowledge that I talked about in the beginning, it doesn't have to be restricted to communities. So this could be an individual effort, and there is really a lack of the kind of resources that we could relate to it as local researchers. So bringing light to these case studies, putting that on the internet, which is an easy thing, communicating that to different communities and sharing that with them could be the simple effort, but really it's a good one, it's a needed one, because this is not an individual effort. And it's not right to think that one course would fix everything, or a group of researchers could fix everything. It's what we have really in mind is like we spread the word and we encourage other researchers to join the discussions, join the conversation.
Thank you very much. To add on to the point, in India, to bring the perspective, design thinking has become go-to thing where people a little bit try to understand what is HCI. So what is your experience in Egypt, in Africa largely, how people think about design thinking, and is this the good way to move forward or something?
Well, this is another hype as well. So design thinking, but really, so and I think we'll engage with design thinking methods in our course. The issue here is not just the method, whether it's design thinking or participatory design or co-design. The issue is you understand how this method would serve a bigger purpose, which is centralizing the human in the design process. So if you think of this as one method that could work in one context and could not work in another context, but it's just a method. So we're taking it as the method. No, it's just one method. So this is a way to go, I would say, is like when you teach design thinking, you could also say there are blah, 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 etc. that already exist. And these are could help you in a way.
Thank you, Shaimaa. And we also would love to congratulate on the huge success of the HCI and would love to interact with the whole ArabHCI and AfriCI team as well, have some dialogues internally and understand how we should move forward together. We have one question which we could take. In my experience for teaching HCI course, the focus on HCI history, for example, how Abacus, Macintosh, Starfire, VR, emerged really helps students to think how to design interfaces for users, which always starts with the human at the center stage. Yeah, it's a comment she's giving us. Right, thank you.
So no.
Yes.
I just wanted to like more of a brief comment. Like I was also like more of a computer engineer in my past life. Then I was introduced to HCI by architects, because they are another group of people who also try to put humans first and then design the buildings around it. So I was wondering maybe they would also help us support in this initiative, like to put humans first in the context.
I would agree with that. I was amazed when I had a conversation with some architect over how much they think of the human. So I think this is what I love about HCI, the being able to be interdisciplinary and draw from other disciplines as well. So if you find that it's possible, it's useful to bring an architect to your classroom and talk to people about the importance of being human, and they will be more convincing than you, just go for it.
Thank you, Shaimaa. Also, to just bring in the point, my advisor, Naveen Bhagalkot, is an architect by training, and he is the one who brought design into my life, and there onwards, things are. So thank you. And thank you for giving your time. Thank you for sharing your experience with us. Hopefully, we would love to engage with you in the future.
Thank you. Thank you.